Agradeço a vocês que estão aí ao vivo, participando do evento. Eu vou fazer uma pequena introdução, a apresentação será realizada pelo Christen. Então, só inicialmente vou apresentar o Christen e depois eu passo pelos primeiros 2 slides. O Christen, ele é o chefe da divisão de análise de risco da IBP Schweiz, né, da unidade que fica em Zurique. É um profissional que tem aí mais de 30 anos de experiência na área de risco, ele trabalhou sempre nesse assunto, com o tema de análise de risco, tanto em indústrias quanto no setor de serviços. Ele também já desenvolveu e ajudou governos, né, estaduais e também a nível federal na elaboração de normas, sempre focadas na questão de análise de risco. Tem, né, dentro de sua, né, experiência, desenvolvido muito no tema do Business Continuity Management, que é uma das, na verdade, ele trabalha com todas as áreas voltadas a risco, que inclui também essa atividade. E hoje ele vai fazer uma palestra para nós justamente sobre esse tema. Antes de passar a palavra para ele, eu gostaria só de colocar aqui 2, 3 slides. Primeiro é que essa aqui é o segundo ciclo de webinars que nós temos o prazer de realizar. Esse segundo ciclo é focado na questão de riscos ambientais e industriais, então a gente está trazendo uma nova abordagem de gestão, muito voltada, obviamente, para a questão da prevenção. E aqui só coloco para vocês os temas que já foram, né? Então, na verdade, já foi o primeiro, né? Que foi uma visão mais geral sobre a gestão de risco. Então, a gestão de risco na indústria da mineração, que foi na última terça-feira. A atual é a Business Continuity Management, que vai ser proferida pelo Christen. E a gente tem aí depois mais 3 outras apresentações, uma voltadas para riscos em estruturas de alta criticidade, e depois 2 voltadas mais para a questão preventiva, proteção e mitigação, e o programa ambiental preventivo. Então, agradeço novamente a participação de vocês. Vou passar a palavra para o Christen. So, Christen, please.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everybody. I will start with a short introduction to this notion BCM, or Business Continuity Management. It's a, let's say, well-known thing since several years. But let me start with another notion. The next slide. It's this buzzword resilience. It's now you will read a lot about this resilience. All is resilience now, but what is resilience? I think it's, let's say, we understand resilience as a multispectral notion, which contains resistance on one hand, ability on the other hand, and recovery capacity on the third hand. And it's also bound not only to technical system, also to social system. And it could be attacked by various threats and also development. That's very important to know. And let's say in the end, when we try to get to a certain definition, there are a lot of definitions around, but I think one of the most known is this, what we see here. When we come to the notion adaptability, it means that a system is then able for a quick adaptation to a development, certain development, that no functional loss or no interruption of the business processes will occur on medium and long term. For example, this one of the example is the climate change. A system could adapt to the climate change, then it's able. It's a certain kind of resilience. Another is, let's say, the note that you understand on the risk management, that if you have an impact on a system, it can take this load with no or more minor functional losses. That is resistance. Third is that this is a combination of resistance and ability to recover, that even you have a certain failure, functional failure, not a very big one, the system is able to, let's say, recover very quickly. And the last is when you encounter a very big loss or a business interruption, then the system is able, in a first in an emergency operation mode to restore then in a, let's say, reasonable time span to a normal operation. That is then the ability to recover. That is what normally is understood by the BCM notion. That is, let's say, a possible definition of this notion, resilience. BCM is not, let's say, a separate thing. It's embedded in, let's say, in a comprehensive risk management approach. I think Vinicius has also, in a former presentation, has also tackled this notion here. It's not, let's say, separated, as I told. It is, you have to, if you do risk management or comprehensive risk management, you have always to deal with BCM, because it's the last step, as you see here in the curative approach, step 4. When you have done your work really thoroughly, that means you have avoided all risks you can avoid, then you have reduced risk, you have taken measures, also you have transferred risk to the insurance companies. In the end, especially the rejection step and the transfer step here, these both steps mostly tackles only the probability of the events. And step 4, it could happen. And therefore, in the BCM, you have to deal with this level of risk in the end, because all this risk here, which you have reduced and transferred, could occur. Let's say it's just a question of probability. Let's say in your BCM process, you have to tackle the whole variety of possible threats here, and also you have to be aware that you have some threats, you have some unknown threats, or let's say very low probability threats which you don't think about it. I think that is very important to see that it is not a special kind of another kind of risk management. It is a part of the comprehensive risk management. Now, what is, and in the end, the BCM? BCM is, let's say, itself a process. It's called business continuity management. It's a process. It's not, let's say, a work which is done and then it's over. It's a whole process. It's a framework on the strategic and operational level in a company. And you see here also in this definition, it derives from the norm, the ISO norm. I will show you later. It's also that's the proactive approach to improve the resilience of an organization. Yes, also this notion is now in the norm against any disruption. And in the end, you see that the second point, that is, let's say, with a certain methodology, you enable the organization to deal with these possible business interruptions, that they can provide the products or services they will do in an agreed level of time of interruption. They can't avoid an interruption at all costs, but you have to minimize the time when you are out of business. And the last is that it's more or less a description about the crisis management. I will also tackle this topic. That is that you have the capability to manage the business interruption. It's not only that you are prepared to, you have also to manage when the crisis is occurring or when a certain event is occurring. That is, let's say, on globe, the definition of BCM. Then, we are not alone. There are very widespread of basic material you can have. The British or New Zealand standards in the early 90s were the first standards written, and a little bit later then came the international standard, the ISO standard 22301. That is, let's say, their international standard for the business continuity management systems. And you can read all stuff here. I will show you a little bit out of this standard, some information, but in the end, there's all written here. And in addition, you have a lot of good practice guidelines, especially from this Business Continuity Institute, BCI. There's a former standard of 2013, now it's a new standard of 2018. There's also this BCM network, which has a lot of chapters around the world. There's also a Swiss chapter. Unfortunately, I think it's no Brazil chapter until now, but it's also a US chapter. You can have some information there. This is the glossar, for example. This is to define all the notions you need in the process of business continuity management or risk management. You see here all these different notions also written on this good practice guideline. And in the end, we have also very freshly or newly a new IEC standard, ISO standard 31010, 2019. It deals with the techniques, risk management techniques you need also in the BCM process. There's a lot of description here, and all different techniques are described, and you see also advantages, disadvantages, and where to adapt and where not, and so on. They have a good information here. I think it's not a problem of lack of information about this BCM process and the risk management process. There's a lot of information. But now, how to proceed? There are two phases you see here. Let's say a preparation phase and let's say the leadership or the management phase, crisis management. In the preparation phase, there's a different papers or steps you have to do. First of all, you have to come up with a BCM policy that could be a part of the general enterprise policy. It's not, let's say, a huge paper that only have to deal with this part of the business interruption part of a company. Then you have to set up some procedures which you have to have, same as in a risk management procedure. Who is responsible for what, and how do you get to an emergency procedure or the emergency mode with the crisis team and so on. All these procedures has to be once written down that they are clear. When the event occurs, then you can react. The BCM strategy is quite important, because in this strategy you will have to set up the goals which you achieve with the BCM process. Means, for example, some key figures like the maximum time which you can be out of business, for example, for a certain event. For example, I give an example of EBP Switzerland. For example, for an ITC failure, complete ITC failure of the whole company, we agree that we have 1 day off. That is okay. But after 1 day, we have to recover with some special measures, and then we are prepared to this 1 day outage. That is okay, but after 1 day we have to come up with a certain emergency operation and then recover within about 1 or 2 weeks to normal procedure or the normal operation. That is, let's say, an example which is written in the strategy. You need this time, also the time to recover. It means RTO, as you are often written in these papers. That means from the emergency operation modus, how long it takes back to normal operation. That is some figures you need to define in this strategy, that you can then in the end judge whether a certain measure is okay or not. Then the other part, when the crisis occurs, when the event is occurring, then you need guidance, or let's say leadership in the crisis, and there you can prepare. We have to have people which can lead in a crisis situation, and that is not something you can prepare, but you can exercise. We will tackle this later on. Now I have to go down here. This is one of the most famous picture you often see in the context of BCM. One important point is we tackle here not only, let's say, some damages to the installation or some fatalities that in the end, we tackle with the notion of functionality. That is the main purpose. We will protect our business, let's say our processes, our production, our services in the company, and we have to have from the moment, from the time where we have an event back to normal operation, not too long time, especially this emergency phase when our business is going down. Hopefully not to zero, but it could be that also in a big event it can go down to zero. And then we have to come up with an emergency mode and then to recover as quick as possible. And then you can do, as I told, first to see not to go down too far. That is the resistance. You have to build up a resistance or the ability to adapt. And then that is time here to shift to the left. That is a recovery time. That is then the ability to recover from a interruption. That is the main task of the BCM process, is to shorten this time when the business is out, when you are out of business. Because if you have a too long time here, it could be that you will going out of business forever, because the other market players will come and take over the business, or it's too expensive then to come back. That is, let's say, one important thing to see here. When we talk about processes and services and production, then we need some vital resources to do this. And let's say in the end, there are about 4, 5, 6 vital resources. I noted here 5 of the most known of this process of the resources. First hand is qualified personnel, professionals, which run your company, which do really these processes, technicians and so on. Then you need some basic material, raw material, also some production material, also let's say machinery and so on to run your company. Then you need certainly energy, especially electrical energy, but also you need some distribution networks that you can distribute this energy. For example, if you need gas or need heat or pressure, then you need also a network which is function. Then naturally the ITC infrastructure is very important, and the logistic and infrastructure, let's say the buildings and also some machineries and so on. All these parts, are the major resources which are very important to see. Then we will see later on in the so-called business impact analysis. We just don't look only to the, let's say, financial damages in a case of an event. We tackle it with these resources. That's in the end, then we can protect these resources that our business is running, and we can produce or we can provide our services. That is very important to see. It's a little bit another focus we will see later on. Now, I told about this business impact analysis is one of the major steps you do also in the process of a risk management process. It means that as you see here, that this organization has to establish, let's say, in the end, a formal documented process which you evaluate these risks, which are you have your let's say set up in your strategy how to tackle this. Also the objectives and targets you will achieve. Then the next point is that you have this process of assessing this impact of a business interruption to your company, and in the end you can see business impact analysis is a process risk analysis, not, let's say, the classical risk analysis which you tackle with, let's say, fatalities and damage to your property. It's a damage of your processes, and in the end of your business process. That is a little bit the other focus, as I mentioned. Therefore, you have also to tackle this topic with the resources. Then they are, that is out of this ISO standard. I don't tackle all these points here. What is, let's say, the requirements of a business impact analysis? You see here some several points. You have to identify the activities, the main activities, the main processes, let's say the key processes you need to provide or to produce your products or you provide your services. Then you have to assess the impacts over the time, as you see on this figure which I showed earlier. How long you will be out of service or how deep you will fall down into functionality. That is very important to assess. And then these goals are mentioned in the strategy. There's a point C here. This specified minimum acceptable level that you can take into account for out of business or for the recovery part. Then you can then see which measure you have to apply to shorten this time. And the last point is also very important of let's say the cascade effect. It means that you have to see to identify dependencies, especially between the resources. One is obvious, for example, energy and ITC infrastructure. If the energy has gone out, the IT infrastructure also will go out. That's a classical dependency between the resources. But there are other dependencies where you have in your system. You have to tackle this because to see whether you don't have a cascade effect as when something is going out of functionality that is tear down and other parts of your company. That is very important to see. That is a business impact analysis. Let's say it's a work you have to do also to review from time to time. It's not, let's say, it's a process. I mentioned BCM. You do it once, but you have to review it, let's say, in a certain period of time. Just to let's say repeat, we have now assessed, let's say, more or less this curve. Let's say we're going down to a certain amount, and we have estimated to come up in a certain time. Then you have to compare it to your goals you have set in your strategy, and then you have to go further in the next step, as we will see in the business continuity plan, where you set some measures or you evaluate some measures, let's say, to see that you don't fall too low down. That means this delta F here, the functionality, or you can shorten the time to come back to normal business. That is delta T here. That is then provided, or let's say analyzed in this business continuity plan, BCP, which is also, let's say, clearly defined in the norm. You see here, let's say, it's just out of this norm, all this information here. You have, let's say, also to define that it is more or less an organizational measure to define the roles and responsibility of the people, which is, let's say, leading in or tackling the crisis. That is very important that you have to set it now, not in the crisis itself, then it's too late. So there's also to tackle here the process of activating the response, on which level you do which steps, or when do you, let's say, call the crisis team, for example, or when you, let's say, go to another location or to a redundant location, when you see one location is endangered or, let's say, can go down within the next few hours or few days. Do you change to another location or not? This is kind of processes you have to tackle in this BCP. Then, let's say that there are detailed measures on which tackles the emergency phase. You have always in a crisis, and first hand when you have encountered an event and your business is going down to a certain amount, you have to go how to protect your people in the company. And then you have other measures on different levels you can do, also to prevent in the end further losses. Let's say this is this cascade effect that you have further losses when something is falling out, that you have then to interrupt this process that the whole company is going down. That is also a very important part in this business continuity plan. And some further information you have to tackle in the business continuity plan. Also, the communication is a very important part. We have now seen in this pandemic situation we have now, also in Switzerland. I'm also a part of this crisis team in EBP Switzerland, and we had in the first phase, in the very acute phase you are now in Brazil. Unfortunately, we had every 2 days we had a meeting with the crisis team, and also we had a lot of information, or let's say communication, to do with our employees, which went at home to home office, but they had a lot of questions, how to do, how this go, what is procedure, and so on. It's a very important thing. You have to come up with a concept or systematic approach for communication of the employees, that they are staying with the company and support the company also through a crisis time. That is very important. And then some more technical, or let's say technical measures, how the organization will let's say continue to recover from a certain business interruption. That it's classical measures you can take into account, redundancy, and then some second places to work and so on. There's a lot of different possible measures you can do. And also you have for the medias, if you are a very big company, which is well known, that you have also a communication strategy and so on, you will see here. In the end, you have also then to clear the signal. Go back some slides here. When you go back to the normal operation, also all this additional work and all this additional communication and this crisis team has also go a step back, and then you go back and say, now we have a normal status now, and a normal operation, and we go to a normal process again. That is also very important to see this point. Once you have to say also to the people in the company, but also to the media, now we are in normal operation again, like in earlier times. That is very important. Now, to finish now, the crisis management I've mentioned several times here. Now, you can train a little bit, that is clear, but in the end, it's a question of leadership. And that is an ability the management has or not. I think one of the very important things is you should not change the usual chain of command during a crisis, not to establish a new, let's say, leadership. You need to have the normal procedures and the normal chain of command, the normal management of your company. But you have let's say, this crisis team. You have to have this because you need more work to do. That the normal in the normal process, the management can handle, but in a crisis situation there are too many questions around, and you have too many tasks to fulfill. They need a crisis team, but this crisis team supports the management team. They never takes over the leadership. That is very important. Often this is a mistake which is often made. That then the crisis team is going in front and lead through this crisis. And that is a big mistake. And we call it, you have to know the relevant people, to know the relevant heads in a crisis. That means within the company, but also outside in the government or in the emergency services. You have to know the right people, that you can react very quickly and to come up to solutions. And in the end, as I told, leadership, you can't, let's say, there are no papers or, let's say, some methodology you have to exercise. That is very important. You have sometimes to exercise, let's say in a normal exercise, also the management in crisis management. We do it, let's say, once every 2 years. We do an exercise in our company when we take some event. Let's say it's a power failure, or it's an ITC failure, or it's, let's say we have a huge fire on our offices, and the whole office has gone away, and so on. And then we have, what do we do? That is, let's say, a classical exercise you have to do. Okay, now more or less we are through with my time. I don't know whether we have space for questions to answer. I'm pleased to answer some questions if somebody has a question. You can do the question in Portuguese. No?
Yeah, we can. As pessoas podem fazer perguntas em português. Peter Christen, vielen Dank für Ihre Präsentation. Agradeço, Peter Christen, pela apresentação. Se vocês tiverem perguntas, podem colocar. E, por favor, também respondam o questionário que está no topo da apresentação. Aqueles que puderem, por favor, isso nos ajuda a melhorar os nossos webinars. Tá bem? Então, a gente aguarda aí uns minutos para as perguntas, antes de encerrar a apresentação. Can you see here better the question? If there is no way to return to normal, I did not see anything in the methodology talking about it.
Okay. Well, that is a bad case if you have, let's say, a really hard strike on your company that you see that you never get back to a normal operation again. That is a part which is very hard to tackle, because then you have to go to a, let's say, a new business case. Let's say a new business process. I think it's when you see here this figure here as shown, that is okay. I do agree that it's just if you have the chance to get back to the normal operation. If you don't have this chance, you can either tackle it in what we have here in this policy or in the strategy. For example, that you ask here, or let's say to try to anticipate. What do we do when we don't have the ability to come back really to our business? For example, we have people, we don't have the people anymore, or we have the market is over, as a marketplace has taken over our position, and we can't go back. What we do then? That you can tackle a little bit in these two papers here. Let's say in the policy, the overall policy, or in the strategy. What do we do then? But in the end, you have to let's say, that is one of the main purposes of the risk management and business continuity management, that you don't have, that you avoid this situation, that you can't go back to the normal operation. I hope I could answer this question a little bit. Thank you. Welcome.
Ok, se não tivermos mais questões, então nós vamos finalizar. If we don't have any question, so we can finish now. Thank you again, Peter Christen, and obrigado a todos por participarem. Obrigado, Marcelo, também, pelo sharing the knowledge aqui. Thank you. Obrigado. Então, a todos.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. Pessoal, eu vou deixar aberto ainda a apresentação por alguns minutos. Quem quiser e puder, por favor, preencher o questionário e depois a gente finaliza. Obrigado.